NASCAR, IndyCar, Formula One. Three of the biggest racing series on the planet. Now, throughout the years that I've traversed through the online motorsport realm, there's always been that one question that I see popping up on a semi-regular basis. Hey, intern over here, intern. What if, hear me out, what if NASCAR, IndyCar, and Formula One had a triple header at the same track on the same weekend? Though the logistics behind something that big would be ridiculously difficult and virtually impossible, what if I told you that there was a time when members of these three motorsports met in one place a very long time ago to achieve one common racing goal? My name is Intern, I talk wheel, and this is the story of the day NASCAR, IndyCar, and Formula One briefly joined forces. Chapter 1. IndyCar. It goes without question that the Indy 500 is without a doubt one of the most prestigious races on the planet, with the Borg-Warner Trophy being coveted by racing drivers all over the world. This was the case since its inaugural race in 1911 won by Ray Harroun, and has been won by IndyCar legends such as Mario Andretti, Al Unser Sr., and AJ Foyt. The Indy 500 presented drivers worldwide with one of the most grueling tasks in open-wheel racing: win a 200-lap, 500-mile race around the yard of bricks. I keep using the word IndyCar, but back in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, IndyCar was run by a sanctioning body known as USAC, which stood for the United States Auto Club. The beauty of the Indy 500 was its open invitation for anyone from anywhere to try their hand at building a car that met the regulations, getting a driver, getting a crew, and trying to win the race. Something we still see today, but back in the 1960s, USAC was about to see this play out in full force. After watching the 1962 Indy 500, Ford executive Don Fry set out to win the prestigious race for Ford and their amazing engines. However, to do this, he needed drivers and car designers that could build cars around his engines to win the race. Aligning himself with Lotus founder and car designer Colin Chapman, the two set out to join forces to win the great race. But to do so, they needed a driver, and luckily for Fry, Colin already had one at his disposal. But this wasn't any racing driver. This was arguably the best racing driver walking planet Earth, and he was in Formula One. Chapter 2. Formula One. The year is 1965, and similar to Fernando Alonso in 2017, Jim Clark has skipped the Monaco Grand Prix altogether in order to take place in that year's Indy 500, driving a Lotus 38 Ford designed by Colin Chapman. But why? Jim Clark by 1965 was a Formula One world champion, winning the elusive title in 1963, and he was a man that raced any and everything. Whether it was Le Mans, Formula 2, or touring cars, Jim Clark was truly a racer's racer, and one team he trusted over everyone at his disposal was Lotus. Why? Because Colin Chapman. That's why. Chapman was a renowned racing designer and founder of the sports car brand Lotus. The two had joined forces in 1960 and reaped the fruit of their labor in 1963, winning both the Formula One World Championships, with Clark winning 7 of the 10 rounds, 7 wins being the most won in a season until Ayrton Senna took 8 wins en route to his maiden title in 1988. Despite this Formula One success, however, one race had still been on Jim's mind: the Indy 500. He attempted the race in 1963, finishing second, though Chapman believed that they were cheated out of the win and that the rules were manipulated so that an American driver would win. A tire failure would rob Clark of an Indy 500 win the very next year. After being screwed twice in a row, Jim Clark set out to win this race at all costs, going as far as to skip the Monaco Grand Prix in F1 to participate in the race. Colin Chapman and the earlier mentioned Don Fry collaborated and the Lotus 38 Ford was born. They seemed to have everything they needed, a fast driver and a fast car. But they needed a fast crew, and the European duo of Chapman and Clark soon realized that to find that crew, they'd have to search in a racing series that had some of the fastest and hard-working crews in all of racing. That series was NASCAR. Chapter 3: NASCAR. Wood Brothers Racing is the oldest team in the history of NASCAR, first participating in the sport in 1950 and still participating in NASCAR to this day. Founded by the late Glenn Wood, the Wood Brothers Racing stable has scored 99 victories and 119 poles at the time of recording, fielding some of NASCAR's greatest drivers like Cale Yarborough and David Pearson. The Wood brothers had a close-knit relationship with the Ford Motor Company, running Fords in NASCAR from their debut in 1950 to the current day in 2021. Aside from their longevity, this team created a pit crew culture, playing a big role in the current pit stop in NASCAR. The Wood brothers were no nonsense when it came to pit stops. When other teams would have their driver exit the car and take a break while the crew worked at a snail's pace, they saw the value in a quick pit stop, doing their best to service their vehicles as quickly and as efficiently as possible. This caught the eye of the other crews, which replicated their work ethic, which birthed the quickness of modern pit stops in racing all over the world today. This ethic is what caught the eye of Don Fry and Colin Chapman, as this is what they believed they needed in order to have the best chance of winning the Indy 500. The Wood brothers got their first taste of racing outside of NASCAR when they were signed to be the official pit crew for Jim Clark and the Lotus 38 Ford team in the 1965 Indy 500. The squad had been assembled. One of IndyCar's fastest cars, one of F1's fastest drivers, and one of NASCAR's fastest crews. So how did it go? Exactly how you expected. Clark started the race second and led lap 1, after which pole sitter AJ Foyt retook the lead. Clark got the lead back on lap 3 and never looked back. The Wood brothers did exactly what was expected of them, barely having to lift a finger as the car only needed to be refueled, as back then tires went the entire distance. Clark went on to take the victory in dominating fashion, leading 190 of 200 laps, 95% of the entire race. Clark was the first non-American to win the race since 1916. This was Lotus's first win at the Indy 500, and they became the first mid-engine car to win the race. This was Ford's first win at the Indy 500 in any capacity, and it was the Wood brothers' first win as a crew at the Indy 500, a feat that would get them presented with the FIA founding members Heritage Cup in 2020. Everybody won in the end. Clark became the first driver to win the Indy 500 and the F1 title, something that ended up being achieved by only 4 other drivers: Graham Hill, Mario Andretti, Emerson Fittipaldi, and Jacques Villeneuve. Anyways, that's it. That's the end of the video. That's the story of the day NASCAR, IndyCar, and Formula One briefly joined forces. My name is 1ntern, I talk wheel, and thanks for watching.